of living crisis, and it's now emerged that his wildly wealthy wife, Ashta Murphy, has non-domiciled tax status. When taxes are rising and many families are struggling, it's hardly the best look. But what exactly is non-dom status? How common is it? How long has it been around? And what are the implications? Well, I'm delighted to say that to explain is our very own economics and business editor, Liam Halligan, who joins me now in the studio. Liam, let's start off simply. What is a non-dom?
Well, this is a status that goes back hundreds of years. It goes right back to the 18th century, to colonial Britain, when people were working overseas and they weren't taxed here in the UK on their overseas income because they were hardly living in the UK, and they might be taxed in other countries, even though you have tax treaties between countries. It's hard to know how many people in the UK are non-dom. They tend to be foreign nationals, like, of course, the Chancellor's wife, who is an Indian national. You can't hold any other citizenship if you hold Indian citizenship. There's quite a lot of countries in the world that insist you hold only their passport if you hold it. Is it really fair for her to give up her Indian citizenship? That's where she's from, that's where she's born, that's where most of her family is. So the Chancellor would point to the fact that this has been around for a very long time. There are thousands of people in the UK who do have this non-dom status, which means on money, when they're in the UK and they work and they earn money in the UK, they pay tax on that money in the UK, but they don't pay UK tax on money they earn elsewhere or money they get from investments that are based elsewhere. Obviously, for some people, it's controversial because it tends to be international, kind of jet-set, high-flying people who have this status. But I have to say, there have been quite a few Labour governments since 1799, when non-dom status was introduced, and governments of all shades and flavours, and none of them have got rid of it.
Is the reason that no government, whether it's Attlee or Wilson or Callaghan or Blair or Brown even, that none of them have got rid of this status, is that reason because we quite want international jet-setting people to be living in the UK? Even if on the business they do elsewhere, they pay tax elsewhere, if they're in the UK, they still pay some UK taxes. And so, in the round, on both sides of the balance sheet taken into account, the Treasury probably does better out of having this scheme than not having it.
Well, the City of London and financial services industries elsewhere in the UK, Edinburgh, Manchester, Bournemouth, there's a big financial services industry. Politicians there, local leaders there, wouldn't want this non-dom status to end. They wouldn't shout that from the rooftops, of course, because the politics of envy come in. You're often talking, by definition, about wealthy people. And it is true that, the City of London, it would be based elsewhere. It's increasingly a cyber web-based, cloud-based industry. You don't need to be physically as in touch anymore. But a lot of the reason the City of London is in the City of London isn't just, and indeed those other financial centres I mentioned, isn't just because of the sort of historic incumbency effect. It's because there's a cluster of really smart people, the vast majority of them British lawyers, British accountants, British strategists, British financiers, British traders, which of course generates a whole heap of tax revenue that we wouldn't otherwise have if that financial services industry was based elsewhere. Look, I know it's absolutely galling to a lot of people. They're having to pay a whole bunch of extra taxes. And it's no wonder Rishi Sunak's enemies have brought this to the fore now. The Chancellor has had a tremendous run during the pandemic, handing out hundreds of billions of pounds of money on furlough and COVID recovery bills, business loans and so on. The Labour Party will like this, the fact that the shine's coming off Rishi Sunak. However unfair it is to target the guy's wife, who isn't involved in politics. They'll say his family is benefiting and so on. But the alternative is that she gives up her Indian citizenship, which is pretty strong. It's also worth saying there'll be some people in the Conservative Party, maybe in other Downing Street addresses, will be quite happy that the Chancellor's getting a bit of a shoe-in over this. I don't think that's too cynical to say. I'm not saying that the Tories planted this story, but I do think there will be people on the backbenches, shall we agree, that didn't like the fact that the Chancellor insisted on raising national insurance when he did during his spring statement, and will see this as a kind of political comeuppance for Rishi Sunak.
Well, Liam Halligan, thank you for that in-depth explanation. I feel like I know much more about non-doms, because this was a story in 2015.
Yeah, it's been...
Let's not forget, it pops up every now and again.
Absolutely. And I could name a bunch of people now who were non-dom back in the past. We'd risk a legal suit, though, because I don't know if they still are. It's very difficult to smoke out this information, but someone has discovered that status of Mrs. Sunak and decided to make political capital out of it now.
Well, it's a fascinating issue, and I know